First of all, I welcome you to this exciting discussion today where we have 8 exciting, brilliant young individuals from industry. My name is E.Custovic and I'll be the chair for this session today, and I'll also be the moderator of the panel discussion that's going to precede this short little introduction. While I serve on many IEEE committees, it is my extensive work with the IEEE Young Professionals and also the Industry Engagement Committee that gives me an oversight over the challenges that young professionals face in academia, industry and everything in between. It is also true that IEEE has a decline in its number of members practicing engineers, and that's one of the challenges that we also must address. Young professionals today face many challenges in their early careers, which include balancing a social life with a professional career, which includes many extracurricular activities, understanding the company culture, developing a career path, obtaining further education while focusing on everyday tasks, and probably a family as well. Furthermore, overarching across all of the above mentioned is the impact of disruptive technologies. They are creating new industries and new business models, destroying the old ones. New technologies, data analytics, and social networks are having a huge impact on how people communicate, collaborate, and work. As generations collide, workforces become more diverse and people work longer. Traditional career models may soon be a thing of the past. Many of the jobs that we do today will not exist tomorrow, and many of the jobs that we'll be working in tomorrow are not yet invented. There will be a major shift away from the thinking that we learn one profession, have one job, and stay in it for decades. In fact, it is fair to say that this radical change has already begun. Young professionals prefer a workplace with a creative, inclusive working culture rather than an authoritarian, rules-based approach. They value open and free-flowing communication, a culture of mutual support and tolerance, a strong sense of purpose beyond financial success, an environment that encourages ideas from all of their employees, a commitment to equality, inclusiveness, and support and understanding of their ambitions. We will hear more about the challenges young professionals face in industry from the young professionals themselves. I've assembled a panel of 8 young professionals representing numerous engineering and technology industries that include telecommunications, power and energy, biomedical, defense, cloud computing, manufacturing, design, and others. Please join me in a round of applause to welcome all of our panelists here today. A quick overview of what we'll be doing today. So we have a short little introduction which I've just presented to you. We'll have a short intro from each one of our panelists, and then we'll dive into our forum discussion and a Q&A that will follow that shortly. So without further ado, I would like to ask each one of our panelists to give us a short introduction about who they are, what they do, and how this panel is relevant to them. And we'll start off with Ramesh Nair.
All right, thanks Eddie. Thanks for assembling this panel here. And it's a privilege and pleasure to be part of this panel. And my name is Ramesh Nair. I work in Intel Corporation in USA. And I hold a master's degree from computer engineering. And I mainly work on hardware design, hardware chip design. And so I graduated in 2013. And since then, I interned with Intel, finished my internship, and then moved on to a full-time job. And then currently, I am a senior design automation engineer at Intel. The way I look at Intel is basically it's a great company to work for. You get to learn a lot of things because most of my peers are basically like 15 years old, 15 years in Intel, 20 years in Intel, and you get to learn a lot of things, mentoring, get mentors and stuff like that. And so my master's thesis was basically on FinFET-based design. So FinFET is basically a 3-dimensional transistors. So what Moore's law, after the end of Moore's law, you basically want to keep it running so that the number of transistors increase as you go down the line. So that's the idea of 3D transistors, and my thesis was based on that. And that's why I basically like the work what Intel is doing, because they were one of the first companies to deploy 3D transistors in 2012. So and I also work on I work on basically low power designs, microprocessor designs, and most of those things. From an IEEE side, I've been with IEEE since 2008 as a student member, and I feel that IEEE completes something that what you can't even get in from your industry and things like that, like networking with CEOs of great companies. So even if you're working in a company where there are like 100,000 people, you might not have the opportunity to talk with a VP or with a CEO all days. But in IEEE, when you're at a conference, you get to network with people, and you get to network with a lot of people, and you also know what is happening outside your company. And that's what I value IEEE for. And I hold several positions in IEEE. Currently, I'm the global vice chair, and I work in Region 6 committees and things like that. And I am a strong believer that your membership of IEEE is complete only when you have a technical society involved. So once I was a student, I used to involve like 3 or 4 technical societies. And once I decided, okay, I like computer engineering or I like hardware design, I decided, okay, that's IEEE Computer Society is the one that I should go for. And I'm an active member in Computer Society, serving in various positions in there. So we'll hear from other panelists, and also I look forward to hearing your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Nivas, Ravichandran.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Eddie, for putting together this panel. So I come from Chennai, India, and I work with this company called Freshworks. We were previously known as Freshdesk. We are into the business-to-business software model. We build software, business software for small and medium companies. I graduated in 2013, and I've been working with them ever since. So I take care of product growth for a particular product within the Freshworks suite of products. And we are, so just to give you a little background about the company, we started off, so we compete with a lot of these enterprise softwares like Salesforce or be the Zendesk and the Microsofts. And so the interesting thing is we are one of the first company to be hitting $1 billion valuation pretty soon. And we're funded by Axel Partners and Google Capital. And we're trying to create the story out of India, the first product story, which is a global product story. And so with IEEE, I started off as a student volunteer, and I've been with IEEE Madras section, and I've been taking care of the Region 10 young professionals community, and also trying to lead entrepreneurship initiatives in Region 10. Yep.
Thank you very much, Nivas. And Sara, Barros.
Oh. Hello, good morning. I cannot say a lot of details about what is it that I do because I work on defense, but I will try to give you an idea. So I graduated in 2013. I did a very broad master's in electronics and telecommunications. And in the end, for my project, I focused more on RF design, front-end design. And now I work on something a bit different. I work on algorithm development for target classification based on microdoppler signatures. And I work on integrated top design, so how to optimize all the systems on board so that they don't interfere with each other and everyone can walk safely on board, etc. As for IEEE, I've been a member since 2009, and I'm currently working as Young Professionals Region 8 Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sara. Aleksander Mastilovic.
Thank you, Eddie. I'm not strictly connected with industry. Most of my career until now was related with the academic part of my work. I received Maria Curie Fellowship Europe Union for research, and I spent my time in University of Novi Sad researching in 5G and enabling Internet of Things application services from communication perspective. Now I'm slightly moving to Telecommunication Regulatory Agency, which is government agency for regulations. So I think I will be able to create some very interesting perspective mixing from government side and from academic side, maybe not strict industry part. So thank you.
Thank you. Dinko Jakovljevic.
Thank you, Eddie. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dinko Jakovljevic. I'm coming from Croatia. I work at Ericsson Nikola Tesla. This is my recent employment. Since I graduated in 2016 from the University of Josip Jurac Strossmayer, I got my master's degree in the computer engineering. At the beginning, while I was a student, I was trying to get a job and landed a job in some sort of a startup company. So I do have quick perception of how it is to work in a startup since I spent like 1 year there. And then I moved, once I finished my master's, I moved to Zagreb for the Nikola Tesla Ericsson Corporation. So like I'm working there in traffic management and also as a public safety systems. In the IEEE, I spent like 60 years. I had several positions there. The most recent one is with the young professionals, MGA. Thank you.
Thank you, Dinko. Abdur Rehman.
Hello everyone, my name is Abdur Rehman. I graduated from Washington State University in 2013. And upon graduation, I secured an engineering and training position within PSC, where I rotated in several different departments within the company until I transitioned into power system protection group. And you can see the book that's on the screen. That's actually the Bible of power system protection, and any protection engineer would know and recognize. At the end of 2013, I learned that my manager was a part of the local power and energy society, and I thought, what a great way to connect with my manager. So I went with him to the local meeting, and next thing you know, I was the YP rep for the chapter. And that's where my IEEE volunteerism actually started. But along the same time, I founded a company called GeneralPack.com, and it's a way for me to share my passion and what I had learned in power system protection with the online world. So I created a series of Khan Academy-like videos on YouTube, and today we have over 1.3 million minutes watched and over 60,000 minutes watched per month. A couple years later, I got my professional engineering license through the company. I was way more involved in the IEEE Young Professionals Affinity Group, now with the section. And around the same time, last year, I founded a company with one of my best friends called AlumiaX.com, and that's a consulting firm for power systems engineering. And today, I'd just like to travel with my friends and family and be a part of IEEE and the YP story. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hossam Ali.
Hello everyone, I'm Hossam Ali from Egypt. I work as a project manager at Vodaphone. I started my career as a technical support engineer at Alcatel-Lucent for 2 years. After that, I moved to another team in integration part to start working in 4G projects, delivering projects to Middle East and Africa regions, working in 9 different countries with multiple operators and network providers. It was really amazing experience for me to travel, see the culture of people in their city and even in work. And I learned a lot from that experience. After that, I decided to shift my career to work in project management, started to get some certifications. So now I'm PMP certified, Prince 2 and ITIL certified. And then I moved to Vodafone, delivering IT projects to Vodafone operators worldwide. And on the other side, I'm now the chair of IEEE Day in IEEE, and I'm part of YP committee in TIMS Society, Technology and Engineering Management Society. Thank you.
And last but not least, Mehrnaz Shoushtarian.
Thank you, Eddie. Good morning, everyone. I live in Melbourne, here in Australia, and over the past few years, I've had a few different roles. I've worked in, I started off in research and then moved a little bit more towards industry. So my research interests were recording and getting information from physiological signals, mainly brain signals, EEG. But I did a postdoc in that area, in a very interesting area, working with people who have Parkinson's disease and seeing if we could extract information about why they have certain symptoms from their brainwaves. But I was very much interested in applying our research. So I joined a little startup company called Cortical Dynamics, and I was with them for almost 6 years, where we worked on developing a monitor of anesthesia, a device that records brainwaves and gives you an indication of whether a person's receiving enough anesthetic drugs during surgery, whether they're receiving too much, too little. So that work consisted of performing clinical trials, so developing the actual device, using it on patients. We used it on patients having cardiac surgery. So that was a clinical trial that went for about a year. Then we used that data to apply for regulatory approval. So you've got to have all the approvals to be able to sell a device. There are Australian approvals, and then there are European approvals. So eventually, we got both those, and that's the device at the top that's got a number 43. So that was quite an exciting project. It's now, I'm not involved with that. I'm in touch with that company, but not involved directly anymore, because it's sort of moved more to the marketing stage, and I decided to go back to do a bit more research. So I've recently joined a research institute in Melbourne called the Bionics Institute, and that's where, if you've heard of the cochlear implant, that's where the cochlear implant was developed. So there's a long history of hearing research there. And we're using now a new technique called, a fairly new technique called functional near-infrared spectroscopy. So using near-infrared light to image brain activity. It's a very exciting technology because you can use it when people have implanted stimulators. So there's no electrical interference on the brain activity that you're imaging. It has a lot of potential. And the idea is to develop better hearing assessment devices. So on babies, for example, who can't give you feedback on whether they've heard a sound or not, or on people with who for any reason can't give you feedback. So at the moment it's in the research phase, but the idea again is to develop medical devices that can help people with hearing impairments. And I've been a volunteer with the Victorian section, the IEEE Victorian section, for about 5 years now. It's a very dynamic section, and especially when I was working with a startup, which was a very small group of people, it was great to have that connection with other people in the field. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that's a general introduction to all of our panelists. And as you can see, it's a very, very diverse background. I tried to bring in the geography, obviously bring in diverse fields of work to give you the best possible perspective in this discussion. So I'll just say a few little things about the questions that we've put together here. Earlier this year, the IEEE conducted serious research into the challenges and needs of young professionals and practicing engineers. And a lot of the questions that are stemming from that research. So one of the reasons we wanted to do that was to really bulletproof and see whether the research will confirm what these young professionals have experienced in industry, but also they give a good starting point. What I will ask you to do is to hold off your questions towards the end. We will have about 20 minutes or maybe even 30 minutes, depending on how quickly we fly through these, and give you guys an opportunity to really ask these young professionals, what their challenges and needs are and how we can address some of those in the near future. So I'll start off with the first question, and it's related to the uncertainty of careers and how to plan for it. So especially in early stages for young professionals. Young professionals see their careers as a priority, but they don't know where they're headed when they start off, how to get there, or even how to plan to get there. So my question here is, how true is this for you, and why is this the case? And we'll start off with Nivas.
Cool. So for me, I think because the one thing is when you're starting off with your career, you're really not decided on where you want to settle, or which stream you want to pick up. And another thing is I don't think I could ever give a long-term commitment of maybe 5 years or maybe 10 years to my immediate job. So those sort of things being there, I think job opportunities are available, but moving from, because there are opportunities abroad as well as in India. So it is very uncertain that you never restrain yourself to one specific place. And with expectations from IEEE volunteering that you have to have like a 2-year term, becomes really difficult for you to adjust with your work. And it does become a little tricky over there.
Okay, thank you, Nivas. I'll also ask the same question of Dinko, given that you've just recently moved into industry, perhaps this question is quite relevant for you.
Oh yeah, thank you. So the thing is, the only thing that I knew what type of the job I would like to have in the future was like related to the computer engineering, since I enrolled in the university and I was really interested into it. But the university life and my student life gave me opportunity to experiment with the various type of the industry there. So I spent first 1 year working in a startup company. We had like 6 friends who were creating some software for clients abroad. So at the time when I was in Osijek, when I was doing my studies, we have some sort of software explosion there, since there's a lot of agencies and a lot of firms who were opening in the time span of 5 years. So it was really becoming a thing. So in Croatia, a lot of developers and experts were coming to Osijek to found the new companies and then find their fortune there. So it was something that I was at the right time and in the right place. So I give it a go and then try to experiment through whole my studying there in the various companies. And I joined the IEEE there. Also met some friends who gave me some sort of broad sense to see that there is also a lot of companies outside the region where I live. That's why I landed the first internship with the Ericsson. So that was the link with the IEEE. So the one volunteer from the IEEE just sent me an invitation to the internship, so I wasn't aware of it, since we didn't get that information through the university. And then I give it a go, and as a consequence, I moved to Zagreb when I was finishing my studies, and I'm happily now working at Ericsson for a whole year. So I didn't have a plan, to be honest. The only plan that I had was like to enroll to the computer engineering, and then the things just get along. And I try to experiment as much as I can, because I didn't want to have, from the beginning, full commitment. I just wanted to explore all possibilities and find what's the best for me, and then go in that direction.
Absolutely. Abdur, your view, have you had a plan all along, or was it always luck?
Well, I don't think it was luck. It was in my junior year that I realized that my university was one of the best in the country for power systems. And we had a lot of influence from the industry at my university. And so that was an area where I wanted to go into, but I had other options available and open as well. It wasn't until I got an internship at a local utility in my area that I found my calling. And because of that internship, that led to another internship that was in the same area, which led to an entire career in the power systems engineering field. So for me, I thought that the internship was really the pathway to where I am today and where I'm going tomorrow.
So maybe I'll throw the question at Ramesh. How do young professionals create a better plan in terms of their career when they're launching their career, in your view?
So, so I think the main idea is basically you need to know what you want to do in terms of your career. So it could be from mentors that you understand. It could be from some other people that you get inspired and say, okay, this is what I want to do. So for me personally, I decided that I would be doing VLSI. I would be doing circuit design when I was an undergrad, because I had folks who taught me VLSI design who worked in Bay Area, who were from Silicon Valley, and they returned back to the academia, and then they taught the courses. So I was very inspired by them, and then I decided, okay, I'll do a master's. And then as a dream, my dream was basically to land up at Intel or some very big company which does a lot of circuit design. So that's how I ended up in Intel. And then as someone says, like it's like you have to make sure that you keep growing in whatever way you can. And whenever you talk with mentors, whenever you talk with senior people, you need to be on top of your job and get things done. So for me, I think I was lucky enough to understand that I need to do so and so early in undergrad itself. But for people who experience, for young professionals who just graduate, maybe join a startup, they don't like that, they quit, and then they look for something else. So it's basically upon understanding what you want to do and where you want to land up. So I think I was lucky enough to basically understand that way early, and for some of them it might not be that way, but that is my case at least.
Okay, so that's a very good lead into our next question, and that's related to mentoring. Given that you mentioned that it's very important to have someone to aspire to, someone to look up to. And mentoring is critical to young professional success in their careers. In fact, the research that was conducted showed that individuals, those who tend to stay with their organization for more than 5 years, are more than twice as likely to have a mentor than those who don't have a mentor. So how prevalent is industry peer-to-peer mentoring in your particular industries, and do you feel that it's adequately addressed in the workforce? So tell us about your experience, and I'll go to Sara, please.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it's crucial, of course. So as any young professional, I think everyone has felt that a bit. When they get out of university, they have a wide, broad knowledge of technical fields, but they lack all the thing of what is it to actually apply that knowledge on a day-to-day job, and what exactly a company is expecting from you. And if you don't have a day-to-day mentor that tells you, okay, this is how we do things, and this is my experience, with that you'll feel lost. So in my particular case, and I think some big companies work in that way, you have some intensive training in the beginning. So I had 3-4 months of intense training on radar, because that's also something that you don't usually learn specifically at electronics field. And then after that, you still need from time to time this accompanying. But for me, the mentorship should be even two-folded. So on one hand, technically, of course, you will need that mentorship, but also on how to plan your career. Like, regarding what we were just talking about, I felt completely lost on my first professional development meeting when I was supposed to plan my next training in order to land where I wanted to be in 5 years. And I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do in 5 years. So I know I want to stay at Thales, but how to build up everything that I needed until I was doing something else, I think we lack that kind of mentorship.
Absolutely. So maybe I'll go to Mehrnaz now to give us a different point of view from Thales, and that is moving into a startup company. Mentorship in the startup company, did you feel it was adequately filled in? Given that it's a small organization, the interactions would be different than in an organization like Thales. Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yes, it is very different in a startup. So the thing about startups is they have limited resources and people have limited time, and they're trying to do everything. Like a small, very small group of people are trying to do everything. So there's really not that much mentoring going on. There might be a little bit you can learn from people, but generally there's not much time to sit down and talk through career paths. So what I found was for that particular problem, becoming an IEEE volunteer helped a lot, because you can go to meetings and meet people who have more time, who are more willing to have a chat with you about something particular. And I also found it might be a bit unrealistic to rely on one person or two people as mentors, because again, people don't have time and everyone's busy. But I think it's up to us to find just opportunities where you can find someone specific who can answer a specific question, but then maybe next time you have a question, you need to go to someone else. So maybe that split mentoring would work better.
Absolutely. And Hossam, you've moved from a few different companies. What are the experiences like moving from one company to another? Did you feel that this is adequately addressed between the different organizations?
Yeah, I was moving between multinational companies, and they have similar experience. But when you go to a new organization, you should know about the organization, the teams, persons, the projects, which take longer time from you to ramp up with the new organization. But I was familiar with that because I traveled before, worked in many projects in different countries. So I was familiar to get all the information I need in a short time. All of my assignments before in those countries were like 2 months, 3 months to implement the project. So it's one of my homework I do once I go to another country to know about the organizations, the projects, the network architecture. So you have to find those information at early time to be able to catch up with your organization.
Absolutely. And I'll move into our third question of discussion today, and that is career as a mission. So a job is not just a way of paying bills, but it needs to have some intrinsic value of its own. So one's job should give a person real meaning in terms of what they're doing in their life. But what motivates you to do what you do in industry or what you've done in your career? Maybe give us a couple of examples, Aleksander.
Thank you. In general, some of people in the beginning career dreaming about money and things like that, but very, very soon you realize that that's not something what is satisfied you from this side, just because, you know, money is just important till you underline that you don't need to think about money. I think one of the strongest motivation for engineers worldwide is to create this place better, this world better, to create smart society. We are creating smart technologies right now just because we want to create smart society to improve something what we can call quality of life. And this is something what we can see as satisfactory, what is some kind of feedback from society. And if you can see the thankful people around because you create some regular activities every day easier, we will feel happy. This is something what is very strong for motivation, at least for me.
Okay. Nivas, what about yourself? What motivates you and what do you find exciting about the industry that keeps you going?
So I think I definitely agree to Aleksander. I think when we start off with our career, money or probably going after money seems like an important thing, or going after the highest paid opportunity looks like the most important thing. But I think after a while, even titles or the pay really does not matter as long as you're adding value to what you're doing and how you're able to add value to the organization. So I think for us, because we come from a startup background, we don't have like a regular work hour, and neither do we have to actually show up at work every day. We could do a work from home. So a lot of things are changing for us. And the interesting thing is we're not really working towards just for the organization, but to probably prove something larger. So for us, or at least for the company which I work for, we're trying to build the story out of India. So, and that's more bigger for me than just creating maybe more products or more money out of it.
So you touched on a very good point, which is flexibility. You just mentioned that you don't work a normal 9-to-5 job in this instance, and you're not required to be at work. But sometimes you can work in the evening, you can work remotely. In fact, you're probably here because you have that flexibility. So question 4 is that we know that the new jobs are no longer just a 9-to-5 job or 8-to-4, depending on which part of the world you're in. And this is just one thing, but a series of contracts and gigs that young professionals like to be involved in, smaller projects. And how young professionals want to spend their time at work and how they actually spend it are two different things from what we've learnt. So how important is flexibility in your job, and do you feel that the workforce or the company understands how you like to work and provides you with that flexibility and freedom? So Sara, can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Well, I'm very lucky in that sense. So in my case, I have flexible working hours. I do need to show up most of the days at work, especially because working in defense, there's very limited kind of work that I can do from home. I can eventually remotely connect to my workplace, but then I cannot do the same kind of technical research that I would do at the company. But it's very, very flexible, and it's one of the reasons why I stay there, because it is so much, there's so much understanding between the balance of your personal life and your professional life. So I cannot complain.
Okay, and Hossam, what about yourself? You know, you've been working in industry for a while now.
Yeah.
How much has it changed over the last few years? Do you feel that there's more flexibility? They're actually providing you with that flexibility in your industry?
Yeah, for me it's totally flexible. I can connect from home, from here, doing the same. All action I need to do, I can do it remotely. So it's totally flexible. Even some days I think, why should I go to the work? It's better to stay at the home. I don't have to wake up early. I don't have to waste time in transportation. So I can do everything from home. And I think they in the company like to see our faces. That's why they telling us to come every day. But with flexibility, it's easy. Sometimes I receive, due to different time zone we are working with, so sometimes I receive important email at night and I have to reply for it. So it's nice to have a connection from home. So it's serving the business itself.
Absolutely. Ramesh, do you agree with that flexibility? What's it like at Intel?
Yeah, I guess flexibility is considered as a perk nowadays because so at least with millennials, I guess if you're not given a flexible working environment, you don't need to continue in that company. So millennials keep job hopping and all these things. So we don't really need to continue at the same place if there is no flexibility, or people do a lot of micromanagement or things like that. So you don't like your boss to come and ask you every day, what happened to do, what did you do from 9 to 5? So that's not the way we think. We think trust should be there in the workplace, and that we value it. And at least yes, in my job also, we have to we have night meetings, we have cross-site meetings with other countries and things like that. So flexibility is very, very, very important. Yeah.
So Dinko, again, I'm going to go back to you because you're early in your career, and I want to know more about, as a young professional but early in your career, are you given the same level of flexibility as some of the other co-workers?
Absolutely, yes. So in Ericsson, we are pretty flexible there. So we are able to work at home and work within the company. As Sara also mentioned, there are some tasks that need to be done within the company since we have an access to the labs that are inside, so we cannot access it from elsewhere. For me, it's important because my first job when we landed in the startup, we weren't that much flexible since it was the early stage, so we needed to work twice as hard to just put the things some sort of the stable so that we can have the regular earnings at the month. So and that was some sort of the difference from my earliest stage in my life and now with Ericsson. So they're completely flexible, and we enjoyed it, as Ramesh pointed out. It's some sort of the perk now, and the millennials are enjoying it, and we might find great use of it. Yep.
Abdur, tell me a little bit about your company work, and what do you feel you could use more of in terms of your work schedule? What are the pros and cons of your current work schedule?
So I work for a utility company, and utilities are really slow to change, and they will never change. But change is coming. At my company, we are provided with laptops, with VPNs, with phones, and we are able to actually work from home now. So change is definitely coming, and working from home and like a flexible workplace, it doesn't work for everyone. It depends on the type of jobs that you have and if you're able to. But I feel like companies are now providing that, and it's important for millennials. Like what some of my peers said, I reply to emails in late evenings and check my email, check my phone, and do work outside of the 9 to 5 schedule. And the technologies and tools that are available, my company is making available today, are helping drive that.
Absolutely. And now I'll go to my fifth point, which is leadership. And I think it's a very, very important one for all of us, and I see a few nods heads. But a large portion of young professionals have indicated that their leadership skills are not being developed within the organization as much as they would like it to be developed. And this is quite alarming in some ways because most of the companies that we also surveyed indicated that was one of the most important things they wanted to develop in their young professionals. So the ambition of the company and where they see themselves in terms of leadership development and how young professionals perceive the training of leadership are two different things. So what I want to know is, has this been your experience in your organization, and how do you think this could be better addressed in the future, Aleksander?
Leadership is not something what is probably related with experience. This is just my opinion. Leadership is something you are born with that or not. What changed with your experience? Change just your self-confidence to show that leadership abilities, to start really lead to people. I was faced a lot of people who believed they are leaders, but the result was very bad. But on the other side, I just experienced in the last few months few people who I'm trying to motivate that people to start to leading because I recognize that kind of ability. So that's something what is more related with personality than compared to experience as a factor for that. That's my opinion.
Mehrnaz, do you agree with that? And what is your experience in your early career? Did you find that leadership was something that you were aspiring to get under your belt? And was it developed adequately enough in the early stages in your startup?
In the startup, well, again, being part of a small team, there probably weren't as many opportunities as in bigger companies. But yeah, I think what my friend he mentioned
Aleksander.
about, Alexander mentioned about people being born leaders. Well, definitely some people are better leaders than others, but I think you can learn a lot as well about leadership. And there have been opportunities in my work, but also again in IEEE, I think there's a lot of opportunities for that. Just something simple like organizing a talk, getting a group of people together and motivating them and assigning different tasks, and all that's great practice.
So you're all very, very confident young individuals, leadership skills not lacking in any of you. But what I'm interested to know is, how were those leadership skills developed over the years? What was it that influenced you, and how did you actually aspire to be the person that you are today, Hossam?
Okay, for leadership, I think the best way to improve your leadership skills is by practicing. So IEEE or any volunteering work is the best way to increase your skills in a fast way. Because in company, to get in leadership position, it may take you, leadership, I mean just team lead. It may take 5 years, 6 years to be a team lead, but in volunteering work, you may take you 6 months or just 1 year. So it's the fastest way to learn leadership. And even when you work with the leaders, so you are learning from them. In work, you may be working in a small team, 6 members, but in any volunteering work, you may be working with many people. So it's a very good opportunity for everyone to learn leadership.
Abdur, what about yourself? Your journey in leadership. You're very confident, very well outspoken. So how did you develop these skills?
Not at my workplace, unfortunately. Just like what Hossam was saying, you're not given, when you're young and ambitious in the workplace, you kind of have to prove it to yourself. And unfortunately, it takes time to prove yourself and confidence and leadership abilities. But I did find a lot of leadership opportunities outside of the workplace. And IEEE was one of the places where I got to practice leadership skills. It's incredibly important. You may not find it in the workplace, but there's a lot of opportunities outside.
Absolutely. Sara, IEEE offers a lot of opportunities for volunteering. And I know that companies such as Thales and large organizations pay for very expensive courses for some of their employees to attend and learn about leadership and professional skills and so on, professional development. So what do you think the values are of being part of the IEEE or another professional organization for that particular case versus going into these courses that are being specifically developed and being paid a lot of money for? Where do you see the value in what we do?
That's a tough question. Well, I think that the main difference between having those courses or being in an environment like IEEE is, one, you can practice in a safe environment. So if I'm doing a course that is paid by my company, or if I'm giving the chance of being a leader of a team at my workplace, the kind of pressure that I feel and probably less freedom to try new things is much more limited than I would have at IEEE as a leader. That's one thing. And a second thing is, I think you have at IEEE the opportunity to learn how to contact with so many different nationalities and cultures. And that's really hard, even if you take a specific leadership course. Maybe you meet people from different countries, but I think it's hard to match the panel of cultures that we have here.
And Dinko, early career again. How do you develop such strong leadership skills so early in your career?
Well, I think that I need to blame IEEE for that. So, basically, I'm at the beginning now with my career. And we started doing things because it was fun. So like we wanted to do something. And the IEEE came really handy to us. So like we met so many people who are really sharing our views and doing the stuff that we all wanted to do. And then once we started with the first in the local level, and then we moved to the whole country, and then respectively to the region. So we have so much opportunity to meet so many people, as Sara mentioned, so diverse. And then the leadership and our skills are crafted with the all people that I meet there and the all practices that I meet inside the IEEE. So I would like to see how it goes from the Ericsson side. So and then I'm able to compare. But for now, I really enjoy all the benefits that IEEE provided me.
Hossam, you've traveled to a lot of countries all over Africa, done a lot of work in those countries. What challenges do you face in terms of communications and understanding and the cultural change when moving between those countries as part of your work?
Especially in Africa, most of countries are French-speaking countries, and we have a major problem with the language barrier. And it was not only the problem, but also sometimes you tell someone to do something and he start doing. But by the end, he didn't understand your message. And by the end, you find him did something totally different. So it's your responsibility to make sure that your message is understood. And sometimes I was using SMS and emails better than phones to make sure they can understand the message. So language barrier was the most challenge in Africa for me.
Aleksander, do you agree? You've also done some work in North Africa and other parts of the world. How does that impact what you do? And what's the biggest challenge in communicating with other cultures?
You are asking me for Africa?
Well, yes, and other parts of the world.
Because I don't have experience with Africa. I don't believe that we have too many differences that, which can stop us to cooperate, because IEEE is the best proof for that. People from whole world are here. We communicate. I have a little bit different experience. I was in situations where we cannot talk. We cannot understand each other talking completely different languages. But you know, if you really want to talk with somebody, to communicate, to exchange some messages, paper, pictures, we find a way, but we did the job. And that's most important. So there is no real borders.
Yes.
Borders are in the head.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to point 6, and I'm going to talk a little bit about volunteering, because it is the core and the essence of IEEE, is the volunteer. And as we move into this new age where a lot more is expected from employees, flexible hours is very, very important, but we find it very, very difficult to stimulate certain people in industry. They find it difficult to find time to volunteer. And many employers are not so forgiving, as some of you have experienced. But volunteering is seen as something that is desirable amongst young professionals through our survey work. However, finding time and understanding company structure is a challenge. So what sort of arrangement do you guys have with your workplace, and do you find it difficult to find time to volunteer? But also, what is the value proposition to management within your organization to say that my time spent with IEEE is also valuable towards you, Nivas?
So one of the things with my company, Freshworks, is that we are into the new age software space. And to be really honest, not a lot of these software companies are associated with IEEE to the extent of other engineering organizations. And because of which, IEEE is not looked at as the best organization for us to spend time on, because there are a lot of free smaller communities like Docker has its own community, Product Hunt has its own community. So there are a lot of other communities which we kind of affiliate more to. But I think the biggest value IEEE provides is the technical community which it brings, and the global networking experience. So that is probably the only value proposition which I provide to my organization. And to be really honest, it is a little difficult to convince the management to allow volunteering, because when you have enough free time and you want to allocate it for probably, if you want to spend time with your family, they're fine with it. But when you want to spend time for another organization, the question is, why not spend the same time for the work itself? So that does come in as a question some of the times. Not everyone understands it. So it is a little challenge. But I think it pays on a longer run. It doesn't, because I think as Hossam mentioned, when you're transitioning from one job to another, you start all over from scratch. But I think the best part was I had a professional home, which was IEEE, where I knew, okay, whatever I did was at least I was at a stage where I've moved a percentage.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good that you come to that arrangement. Ramesh, Intel, everyone knows about Intel, and we all seem to have this perception that people at Intel work like ants. So how do you convince the management that working with the IEEE is an important thing? And I ask this question because Intel's structure from our research over the years, there's a declining number of IEEE members within Intel. Now, we won't go into the reasons why that is, but I'm sure that has an impact on senior management as to why it would be valuable to volunteer with IEEE. This is true of all the organizations that you guys work for. If you have a senior manager who's an IEEE member and maybe volunteers occasionally, or maybe he's the chair of a conference every now and then, it's a lot easier to convince them why it's valuable to do that. But how do you go about convincing managers in Intel that what you do with IEEE is of value to them?
All right. I don't think none of my managers are IEEE members, but so what I do is basically I become transparent on. I tell them what I do in IEEE. So I tell them I do this, I do that. I don't make them feel that okay, I just travel for fun. I just go for IEEE meetings for fun. So people tie in fun with IEEE a lot, but the value proposition that you get out of IEEE, say I'm driving this conference, I'm the program chair for this conference, I do this, I do that. And I try to invite speakers from within the industry, within Intel itself, to come and speak at some conferences, some events like that. So that's one addition I give to the company. And the way I look at it is basically I don't get any technical development within IEEE personally, because the people who work in Intel are like the smartest people I have ever met, and they know what they're doing and they're the best at it. So the technical development entirely comes from my workplace. And from IEEE, I get leadership and how to talk to people, how to present something, and things like that. So maybe in office, if you want to present a graph or something, maybe I would have done this before in IEEE and I could present it in a better way. So things like that, you get to learn things. You might be doing things faster at office, and that would have been gained through IEEE. So that's what I tell my company. I do this, I do that. And I invest this much amount of time. I go to these conferences, and I make sure that I tell this to the VP level, to the vice president level, and with that support, for the last 2 years, Intel has been paying for my IEEE membership dues. And so when you look at a normal employee, say not at just Intel, maybe Google or Apple, you have lunch, dinners, everything served at office. You just need to stay at office and work all 8-10 hours, complete your work, go home. So you really don't need an IEEE membership there. And the value, I think, is basically for a large corporation to go up in the management chain or to any level. It's really tough. As Hossam was telling, it takes like 5 to 6 years to get to the next level, and then it's like peer pressure. But in IEEE, basically, you get that leadership skills, you get to talk with people, management skills, and that's the value add I give back to the company. I tell them, hey, you know what? I've done this, I've done that, I've done this before, and this is not something new for me. So I think it's a mix of both technical, management, leadership, all combined together, and you won't get everything in one place. And that's where IEEE and the industry comes together, I guess.
That's a very good roundup. In fact, it's often heard from young people that the biggest strength of IEEE is the power of the network of the people that you meet in this organization, as opposed to all the other things that we pick up along the way. Mehrnaz, going from the startup into a slightly larger organization now, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you convince management. I mean, in a startup, obviously, there's not a lot of resources to be able to do everything, and then moving into a slightly larger organization, how did you pitch working with the IEEE to the startup as opposed to the larger organization that you work for now?
With the startup, it was mostly about, they were aware that there weren't enough opportunities there for networking and for mentoring and leadership training and all the things we've mentioned. So, so it was mostly about letting them know that I need further opportunities. That's why I need to work with IEEE, volunteer for the IEEE, and that was fine. But most of the work had to be done out of the office. So finding time, it was sometimes an issue, but can be done. And then in a larger organization, Yeah, it is a bit more difficult. But again, I think you have to pitch it so that they realize it has a benefit for the organization as well. So if you let them know that you're going to be in a conference with 1,200 people, and it'll be good for people from other countries to hear about, say, the Bionics Institute, then it's as long as there's benefits to them as well as for you personally, then I think it's okay.
Yeah. Aleksander, now, you work with a lot of organizations all over Europe, and I've often heard you say young professionals and professionals in industry don't necessarily see the value in being part of a professional organization unless it's really critical to their career path. So, you're involved with IEEE and other professional organizations. What is it, from your perspective, that other young professionals in industry are not necessarily seeing in being part of an organization like the IEEE? How do we address that?
Young professionals in IEEE is something what is super important for first steps in career, because we have a chance to share experience. So everybody in the beginning of career have the same fears and problem with some decisions with I don't know how to properly choose the career path. And compare with some other organization, young professionals is in IEEE is very good focused on academic area, and we can recognize a lot of benefits if we work closely to academic or you are still a student. But I hope that in future we can increase our presence in industry and to redefine our benefits and visibility in the industry, because sometimes personally I'm not sure how to explain the people who lead the industrial organization what is the benefit of IEEE. Of course, as Ramesh said, sometimes we have very successful approach, but we are talking about personal approach. If we want to create a stronger connection with industry, we need to organize something what we call system approach, how to connect IEEE with industry.
Thank you. And now, since we're focusing on industry, I want to move away from what we've talked about, mostly professional development, professional skills, and touch on the technical part. What is the single biggest, or maybe a group of challenges in your profession, technical challenges? What is it that bugs you every day, day-to-day? How do you go about solving it? Nivas.
So I think I actually do not rely on IEEE for that. There are a lot of resources which are available to these are mostly challenges which we're probably facing for the first time in our organization, or someone else from another, maybe a competitor or maybe a larger company has identified a way to solve it. So we probably just look at best practices and identify how to crack it.
So there's sufficient information sharing between organizations for you guys to be able to undertake the challenge?
I think at least the new companies, which are the software companies which are coming up, are open about sharing, not really all the information, but at least how they're going about it is being shared in terms of white papers or blogs. I think that's happening.
Good. Sara, Thales, what is the single biggest challenge that you face from a technical perspective?
Well, I wouldn't talk about Thales in general, because Thales, in some countries, they don't work on defense, so that should be fine. But in our particular case, in the Netherlands, of course, defense companies don't like to share what they're doing in their research and how they're solving their own problems. So that's definitely a challenge, because every time we are working on something that you cannot just go for papers and look for it. Of course, you have to get creative and try to adapt new things and give them a different color in your own research. That's also why we have such an intense training in the beginning, I believe, because you do need to learn all those broad skills from day one so that you can just readapt them into your day-to-day research.
Abdur, what about yourself?
Well, I think from a power systems perspective, there's a new layer that's being put on top of the power system, and that's the communication side. And this new layer tries to solve old problems, but it also creates new challenges. And so I think the biggest technical problem in my industry is to effectively and securely use the communication layers to solve old and new problems.
Mehrnaz, what about yourself?
Yeah, for me, I think it's been having all the tools in terms of software, hardware, everything, having it as so that we could develop things faster. It's not always feasible to buy all the software that you need or all the hardware, and you end up sort of reinventing the wheel a bit just to save money. So yeah, it's getting that balance right between spending money and getting what's already out there and developing your own.
Absolutely. And Aleksander, what about yourself? What's the biggest single technical challenge that you face day to day?
I'm facing a lot of technical challenges these days. Really, in telecommunication world, we now have some kind of revolution because we are, as colleagues said, you talked about smart grid problems, and we now need to enable the huge amount of new possible services calling Internet of Things. So we are facing a lot of challenges because we will not talk about anymore. We will not talk about human-centric communication where people calling to each other. We will start talking about massive or critical machine-to-machine communication between sensor and automation system with some automatized reactions. We are talking about smart cities, a smart grid. We are talking about vehicle-to-vehicle possible communication, self-driving cars. And for all of that, the still critical point, the only bottleneck we have right now is telecommunication issues. So if we want to talk about challenges, we need specific panel for that because it's really full of job right now. I will underline that possible solution we will waiting in the form of something what we call a 5G or a fifth generation mobile network. And everything what we are expecting that this new standard, this new approaches, with new algorithms will be enough to serve all that services.
Thank you very much. Ramesh?
I think the biggest challenge anyone in the VLSI industry would have is basically how to keep the Moore's law running. So we are hitting 10 nanometer now. So we go to 7, 5, and then where do we go? So else I'll be jobless in like 10 years. So so we need to understand where we are going, what type of transistors to use. I guess that's the biggest challenge we have.
So how much input, how much understanding do you have of where Intel is heading with its production? How does that impact your day-to-day challenges then?
Okay, so the tools that we use, so I work on making flows and tools that work on these devices. So the tools that you use, you need to keep tuning it to make it possible. So say you're analyzing power or something. The characteristics would have changed when you go down the transistor node. So we need to understand what that new numbers are and then come up with that. Otherwise, when you go back, you manufacture your chip, it won't work. So it's really challenging.
Hossam?
Yeah, for me, I'm now a project manager, so I'm no longer a technical guy. But the challenge I faced many challenges before, but the main challenge I face now is about politics. I mean by politics, about the teams, who loves who hate who will be happy with your success, who will not. Because we are in Egypt and we are delivering project management service to Vodafone operators worldwide, and some people in those countries are not happy with that. Why you get someone from Egypt to manage a project in my country? And we have some internals and some externals. So there are many teams, there are many people interested in what we are doing. So it's now the challenge to understand who will be happy that I'm here in the project and who will not, so I can manage my communications.
Well, thank you very much. And lastly, Dinko, I want to hear from you as well.
Oh yeah, so when I moved for Ericsson, I was hit with a lot of challenges because when I went to the college and university, you get some foundation, some basic knowledge. And when I enrolled at Ericsson, it was so specific, right? So I was facing a lot of challenges in order to understand how the things work there. And there the mentorship program was really handy to me because we had peer-to-peer mentorship there. So I was assigned a mentor who was leading me through all my process there. So I was able to easier get into the more technical stuff. So they also pay some courses that I could attend. So it makes my life quite easier there.
I see. Thank you very much. Now, I've gone through most of my questions here. I do have a few more, but I want to throw the microphone to the audience. You guys have been patiently waiting. If anyone has a question they would like to ask now, I'm more than happy to pass over the microphone, or we can keep going with the panel discussion. So, yes, Khalid.
Okay, I would like to ask a question for you and the panelists. For you as YPs, more than 5 years working in this industry, plus or minus 5 years. And I would like to ask, what is the real challenge that you see in your job and you still doesn't have an answer for that challenge, or something that solves this challenge in the IEEE? So what do you think the IEEE can add to your challenges, or something that you are searching in the IEEE but you can't find yet? Like, you have a platform for communication, for networking, for whatever, and it's really working, but what else do you need from the IEEE to advance your career, to give you something new, to give you a technical perspective more than you have, whatever? So if anyone can answer that question.
Yep. So, show of hands who wants to answer that question first. Who's excited enough about it?
Well, I can give.
Yep, Sara.
For me personally, for me, it would be career planning, in the sense that right now, with globalization as it is at the moment, there's just so many opportunities and options and different ways you can shape your career. And there's so many senior people in IEEE that have already gone through that. I would like to see a more targeted kind of mentorship in that direction, so that for me, if I start thinking what exactly are the trainings or the kind of jobs I should be doing, or if I want to go in one direction or another, I'm personally still a bit lost in that sense. I get some training in my own company, and if I tell them, oh, I want to be a project manager in 5 years from now, they will give me training for that. But maybe that's not the ideal or optimal path that I could be taking, and that I would like to see.
Anyone else want to add to what Sara just said? Yeah, we'll move on to the next question from the audience. Yes, thank you. There you go.
I just want to build on both your comments. I did hear a few times that the IEEE is not the technical resource that young professionals are seeking out. They're seeking it out more for leadership and professional development. Is that a concern? Should the IEEE be the place where people want to go build technical skills, and should we partner more with industry to understand what technical skills young professionals need to be building, so that they encourage more participation with the IEEE as well?
That's an excellent question. So, Abdur, you want to take that one?
I think I was just talking to someone about this yesterday. I think we all, as young professionals, will stay YPs for what, about 10 years? And then after that, we really have to align ourselves with the technical society so that we can, develop our careers within that society. And at the core of IEEE are those technical societies. One example that I wanted to give was there was a company in the Seattle area that wanted to sponsor an event where they brought in multiple different vendors and manufacturers to bring in one place so that they could talk about a certain issue that they were having. Well, on that day, I was one of the people that were there. It turned out that it got canceled because they were afraid of the competitors. And they didn't want to have competitors under one table and kind of eyeing what they were working on. So what I offered as a IEEE YP rep was to host a technical panel that was a IEEE event. And now it neutralizes the plane. So I think at the end of the day, YPs would have to align to a technical society. Yeah.
Okay, Ramesh, you want to also comment?
Yeah, so I totally agree with Abdur, because with IEEE, we all see diversity and so when I network with these professionals over here, I get to understand what they do in their industry, but that's not helping me on my industry, right? I know what they're doing, their challenges, their needs, and then I get a broader perspective, but I'm not getting the depth. So that depth is only fulfilled when you are part of an IEEE society. So that's why I told in my initial presentation itself. So I was part of like 4 or 5 societies initially, and then I decided, okay, computer society is the way I need to go. So I think what IEEE as general should do, even starting from a student membership, instead of just promoting your IEEE membership, you should tell a package. Okay, say you're a computer science student, so Computer Society plus IEEE is the package for you. If you're Power and Engineering, Power PES and IEEE is the package. So we should be promoting IEEE along with these technical societies instead of technical societies trying to promote themselves and IEEE trying to promote themselves. So we need to go hand in hand so that we can get the best package out for the students.
Absolutely. So I know I'm conscious of time, but I want to ask the question of the entire panel and just a show of hands. Given that I think this question has started a really interesting discussion, hand up if you feel that IEEE is not providing the depth and the technical knowledge that you need in your profession. And I'm not just saying this that you don't have that information, but maybe you can't access or can't get to that information. So hand up if you feel that IEEE is not the primary source of information that you go to for your technical development. Okay, and that's fine. And this is one of the important challenges that IEEE must address, and other professional organisations that put a hand. So, Sara, I want to ask you as well. Then, at that point, if you don't feel IEEE is the organisation that provides the technical knowledge that you need, should IEEE be that body for you personally? And why do you feel it's not providing that information for you?
Well, I think the defense is a very specific case, so maybe not a good example for this discussion. I personally don't think is, I think it would be a very hard task for IEEE to try to fill all the holes in technical, I mean, it's just not going to happen. You can try to do some very well, but to try to cover everything, it's just then you're going to do half of everything. So I think in the case of defense, that's a hard one to fill. But that's just my personal
Okay, so that point, I know that often people say IEEE. We say IEEE is this all-encompassing, all-knowing body that has all this knowledge and it's contained in every topic. And we see new initiatives being launched. We're now delving into food engineering, the North and the South Pole, and all these other interesting topics. So you make a very good point. We want to be everywhere, but is that realistically achievable? I mean, that's a question for the IEEE as a whole. But who else wants to make a comment on whether you find the IEEE provides sufficient technical knowledge for you to take your career further? Anyone else have a comment on that one? Hossam.
I think for me it was a good source of technical knowledge because I learned leadership and management in IEEE. I'm volunteer since 8 or 9 years. Starting, I was the chair of IEEE Cairo University student branch. So without the work I have done in IEEE, I didn't learn anything in management or leadership or even managing. What I'm doing now in my job is really exactly like what I'm doing in IEEE. I'm managing remote teams, and in IEEE, I'm the chair of IEEE Day, and we have members from everywhere, and we have 3 members here attending the session from Brasilia, Puerto Rico, and US. So if I didn't learn that in IEEE, I wouldn't have do what I'm doing now.
Okay, Dinko, you wanted to offer a comment as well?
So from my perspective, I saw that it's really different from technical society to the technical society, how much information you can get. So I have a feeling that the new technologies are not that well covered with the IEEE and that we are kind of behind of it. So like we need to keep track with it. So we are doing well in the, for instance, in the PhDs or the industry applications, but if we are going to like the big data and the 5G things and so on, so like we're kind of behind. So the more knowledge I can get from my companies, since they're in frontier in that field, so I turn to them instead of the IEEE.
Very good point. There were 2 questions at the front here. I'll just go to this question first up here. Thank you, Fred.
An opportunity I see here, you have a very wide experience. In your careers for a good number of years. The lessons learned, I'm thinking of a section that we could offer to our close to or recent graduates. What would you have done differently, or what could I stress this specifically, how your IEEE area could have helped you in that phase?
Okay, someone specific in mind for the question?
Right.
Anyone in specific, or you just want to?
I just asked the general question. We've all had lessons learned. What would we have done different if we could go back and say, gee, this really would have helped me and I wouldn't have had to struggle so much.
Yep, okay.
If I'd done something like that.
Yep. So that's a very good question. So if you go back a few years, some of you are 5 years out of industry, but if you can go back a few years, what would you do differently to help you advance your career? Who wants to take that one? Can you take us, Mehrnaz?
And specifically how IEEE could have helped.
Yeah, and how IEEE could have helped in the early stages. So Mehrnaz.
I'm not too certain how IEEE could have helped, but I probably would have been more demanding from my managers and employers in terms of professional development and opportunities that I need. So I wasn't always brave enough to ask for things. I probably would have asked for more. Anyway. And maybe IEEE has helped in that sense. Again, learning from people who are involved in IEEE, it has taught me that you need to speak up. And
Well, I remember the first few weeks where you're pretty intimidated by everybody around you. You got a lot to learn. Maybe IEEE is the idea you could go to a meeting and you don't have to feel like your peers who are judging you. And you just find out information. It may not be specific to your job.
yeah,
But you learn a lot from other people.
That's right.
Especially the ones who've had 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years more experience than
That's
yourself.
yeah.
And we've heard that throughout now, that people feel that IEEE is a safe environment to learn in. Less pressure. I mean, you're not being paid for the job, so therefore, you're being not pressured so much to achieve certain things. But Ramesh, you want to offer a comment as well?
I think IEEE as such, being a student, the best thing IEEE can do is help students get internship and jobs. So why students drop out after student and don't continue to be young professionals is really because IEEE is not helping them at all. So if IEEE had helped them to get a job and internship, then they would stay with IEEE for life. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's a very
Another
good
way
point.
to word the question is, if you were to go back to your university you graduated from, you had the senior class sitting there and they're just about to go out the door, what would you tell them is to help them make that first step?
In terms of IEEE?
helped them?
So I think what I would tell them is IEEE has a lot of resources for students which they can always avail to, like say project funding or competitions or everything in that sort. So what I would tell a senior class is basically go check out these resources and go network with the local sections and things like that to basically help to know where you want to go. That's what my advice would be.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to go. We've got 5 minutes left over, so we've got 2 questions here, and I'll just take one of them. Okay. Yep. Sorry.
Thanks everyone. I'm Golna from Victorian section, and from my experience, I have academic background and recently joined industry in telecommunication field. What I faced, which was a bit surprising for me, was while I was at uni as a student and then after that staff working, I had access to all IEEE resources in terms of publication and all whatever was available to everyone through university. When I joined the industry and started paying full membership, and I felt like, well, I'm like a full member of IEEE, but when it happened that I required to do some research, I was surprised not having access to the information that I needed. So I was only locked into accessing these to certain societies that I paid specifically for, and which wouldn't give me enough information I was looking for. So I had to go back to my university library website. I was still having access and getting those information, which is there available for me for a short period of time. So I felt like a bit frustrated not having access as an IEEE full member in industry to what I really needed for my research. And my question to you guys is, was that only my experience, or is that how it is for everyone, or have you found it as a challenge being in an IEEE young professional in the industry?
Okay. Who wants to take that question?
So I think some of the industry, some of the industries do have a corporate membership, but mine didn't. But the interesting thing was, whenever I had a particular need in terms of be it IEEE or in terms of any other learning courses which I would want to take, or probably something which I needed for my research, I mean, my organization has been pretty supportive about it. But I think you could actually try asking if you could claim for it. I mean, if they could get you maybe access based on demand instead of, I mean, because maybe they might not a lot of people might use IEEE. I mean, I'm just assuming that for your organization.
Okay, Hossam, yep. Then we'll go
Okay,
to Abdur.
I was working as a technical support engineer at Alcatel, and I didn't need to go through the IEEE papers or portals. I wasn't doing research, but we have a portal related of Alcatel-Lucent, and it has all the documents I need, the description of equipment, technology, everything. So if I need any info, I go to the documents of Alcatel-Lucent and I read it, and that's it. I don't need to go to IEEE in that.
Yep. Abdur?
You are not alone. I went through the same challenges and I used the same exact technique as you did to try to get more papers through the university library website.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end of our forum, but what I'd like to get is one short little statement from each one of you. I guess a recommendation or a piece of advice that you could offer other young professionals that are embarking on a career in industry or that are transitioning into industry. What piece of advice would you give them when they're heading down that path? Nivas.
So I think Ramesh mentioned about internships and opportunities. I think IEEE as such provides a great network experience, so try to build over that. Most of my opportunities came because just ask for it. I think majority of the times we just feel a little reluctant to ask for it. And even in the industry, nothing comes to you in a silver platter. So just go for it and ask, and I think majority of it happens. So anyone joining the industry, I would say just ask for it, and I think it might just happen.
Yeah, thank you. Mehrnaz?
I would probably say pick a role where you're in a good team that you enjoy working with and you can learn from and you can feel that you're contributing to.
Oh, thank you. Abdur?
I would say to embrace the grind. Sometimes when we get out of college, we think, superfluously about a career. But when you're out for the first couple of years, it's a grind, and you just have to embrace it to move further and faster.
Aleksander?
For the beginning of any career, just don't be scared of changing. If you don't feel comfort in some place change or company change or city, country, continent, whatever, just find your place in this world.
And we're lucky enough to be in an industry and I guess profession that allows us to work anywhere around the world. Ramesh?
So I guess what my advice would be is there is no one place that you can grow leadership, management, technical, everything. So you need to explore the options. And if it's not your company, you need to be part of a professional society. And one thing is, in a company, everyone would be inclined in one way. These are the things, how things are done. So you are doing it this way. But if you get an outside perspective, you can, make some disruption inside the company itself.
Yep, Dinko?
Yeah, so my advice would be stick with the IEEE because we have incredible network of people. We have also senior members who can help us with some sort of advice if we get stuck along. So this ability to have and share my ideas and my problems with someone who will actually listen to it and make some advice for me is really crucial for me. So along the time, the IEEE will itself also make better things, and we as young professionals will embrace it.
Sara?
I agree with Vinko. Explore IEEE, the abuse of IEEE. So don't just be a member, volunteer. Do actual relevant networking. Don't just walk around the room. And it will help you throughout your professional life.
Thank you. Hossam?
My advice is not to stay in one company or one position for more than 3 years. You will lose a lot. Your curve of learning will be saturated and you will not gain anything from staying at same position. Most people don't like a change, or maybe they don't like to move, or maybe they're afraid of the risk, but it's worth to take it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I guess that's the conclusion of our Young Professionals Industry panel. So before we give them a round of applause, two things. I've been told to encourage you to keep voting on the recommendations, so that's one important thing. And secondly, once you give these guys a round of applause, I've always wanted to take one of those selfies with everyone in the room, so I encourage you to stick around for a second. I want to get everyone in one big shot, and I think you found it quite valuable to hear the life lessons from these guys here, and I continue to encourage you to really continue these conversations with the young professionals, embrace the challenges that they have, because their challenges are also our challenges, and there are challenges for the IEEE as a whole and how we deal with the future, which has a big question mark over it, but we embrace challenges very, very strongly. Thank you very much.